This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. What I Saw in America by G.K. Chesterton. Section 23, Chapter 11, The Extraordinary American. When I was in America, I had the feeling that it was far more foreign than France, or even than Ireland. And by foreign I mean fascinating rather than repulsive. I mean that element of strangeness which marks the frontier of any fairyland, or gives to the traveller himself the almost eerie title of the stranger. And I saw there more clearly than in the countries counted as more remote from us in race or religion, a paradox that is one of the great truths of travel. We have never even begun to understand a people until we have found something that we do not understand. So long as we find the character easy to read, we are reading into it our own character. If, when we see an event, we can promptly provide an explanation, we may be pretty certain that we had ourselves prepared the explanation before we saw the event. It follows from this that the best picture of a foreign people can probably be found in a puzzle picture. If we can find an event of which the meaning is really dark to us, it will probably throw some light on the truth. I will therefore take from my American experiences one isolated incident which certainly could not have happened in any other country I ever clapped eyes on. I have really no notion of what it meant. I have heard even from Americans about 5 different conjectures about its meaning. But though I do not understand it, I do sincerely believe that if I did understand it, I should understand America. It happened in the city of Oklahoma, which would require a book to itself, even considered as a background. The state of Oklahoma is a district in the southwest recently reclaimed from the Red Indian Territory. What many quite incorrectly imagine about all America is really true of Oklahoma. It is proud of having no history. It is glowing with the sense of having a great future and nothing else. People are just as likely to boast of an old building in Nashville as in Norwich. People are just as proud of old families in Boston as in Bath. But in Oklahoma the citizens do point out a colossal structure, arrogantly affirming that it wasn't there last week. It was against the colours of this crude stage scenery, as of a pantomime city of pasteboard, that the fanatic figure appeared which still haunts me like a walking note of interrogation. I was strolling down the main street of the city and looking in at a paper stall vivid with the news of crime, when a stranger addressed me and asked me quite politely, but with a curious air of having authority, to put the question, what I was doing in that city. He was a lean, brown man, having rather the look of a shabby tropical traveller, with a grey moustache and a lively and alert eye. But the most singular thing about him was that the front of his coat was covered with a multitude of shining metallic emblems made in the shape of stars and crescents. I was well accustomed by this time to Americans adorning the lapels of their coats with little symbols of various societies. It is a part of the American passion for the ritual of comradeship. There is nothing that an American likes so much as to have a secret society, and to make no secret of it. But in this case, if I may put it so, the rash symbolism seemed to have broken out all over the man in a fashion that indicated that the fever was far advanced. Of this minor mystery, however, his first few sentences offered professional explanation. In answer to his question touching my business in Oklahoma, I replied with restraint that I was lecturing. To which he replied without restraint, but rather with an expansive or radiant pride, I also am lecturing. I am lecturing on astronomy. So far a certain wild rationality seemed to light up the affair. I knew it was unusual in my own country for the Astronomer Royal to walk down the Strand with his coat plastered all over with the solar system. Indeed, it was unusual for any English astronomical lecturer to advertise the subject of his lectures in this fashion. But though it would be unusual, it would not necessarily be unreasonable. In fact, I think it might add to the colour and variety of life. if specialists did adopt this sort of scientific heraldry. I should like to be able to recognise an entomologist at sight by the decorative spiders and cockroaches crawling all over his coat and waistcoat. I should like to see a conchologist in a simple costume of shells. An osteopath, I suppose, would be agreeably painted so as to resemble a skeleton, while a botanist would enliven the street with the appearance of a Jack in the Green. So while I regarded the astronomical lecturer in the astronomical coat as a figure distinguishable by a high degree of differentiation from the artless astronomers of my island home, enough their simple loveliness for me, I saw in him nothing illogical, but rather an imaginative extreme of logic. And then came another turn of the wheel of topsy-turvydom, and all the logic was scattered to the wind. Expanding his starry bosom, and standing astraddle with the air of one who owned the street, the strange being continued, "Yes, I am lecturing on astronomy, anthropology, archaeology, paleontology, embryology, eschatology, and so on, in a thunderous roll of theoretical sciences apparently beyond the scope of any single university, let alone any single professor." Having thus introduced himself, however, he got to business. He apologized with true American courtesy for having questioned me at all, and excused it on the ground of his own exacting responsibilities. I imagine him to mean the responsibility of simultaneously occupying the chairs of all the faculties already mentioned. But these apparently were trifles to him, and something far more serious was clouding his brow. "I feel it to be my duty," he said, "to acquaint myself with any stranger visiting this city, and it is an additional pleasure to welcome here a member of the Upper Ten." I assured him earnestly that I knew nothing about the Upper Ten, except that I did not belong to them. I felt, not without alarm, that the Upper Ten might be another secret society. He waved my abnegation aside and continued, "I have a great responsibility in watching over this city. My friend the Mayor and I have a great responsibility." And then an extraordinary thing happened. Suddenly diving his hand into his breast pocket, he flashed something before my eyes like a hand mirror, something which disappeared again almost as soon as it appeared. In that flash I could only see that it was some sort of polished metal plate with some letters engraved on it like a monogram. But the reward of a studious and virtuous life, which has been spent chiefly in the reading of American detective stories, shone forth for me in that hour of trial. I received at last the prize of a profound scholarship in the matter of imaginary murders in tenth-rate magazines. I remembered who it was who in the Yankee detective yarn flashes before the eyes of Slim Jim or the lone hand crook a badge of metal sometimes called a shield. Assuming all the desperate composure of Slim Jim himself, I replied, "You mean you are connected with the police authorities here, don't you? Well, if I commit a murder here, I'll let you know." Whereupon that astonished man waved a hand in deprecation, bowed in farewell with the grace of a dancing master, and said, "Oh, those are not things we expect from members of the Upper Ten." Then that moving constellation moved away, disappearing in the dark tides of humanity, as the vision passed away down the dark tides from Sir Galahad and Starlight mingled with the stars. That is the problem I would put to all Americans, and to all who claim to understand America. Who and what was that man? Was he an astronomer? Was he a detective? Was he a wandering lunatic? If he was a lunatic who thought he was an astronomer, why did he have a badge to prove he was a detective? If he was a detective pretending to be an astronomer, why did he tell a total stranger that he was a detective 2 minutes after saying he was an astronomer? If he wished to watch over the city in a quiet and unobtrusive fashion, why did he blazon himself all over with the stars of the sky, and profess to give public lectures on all the subjects of the world? Every wise and well-conducted student of murder stories is acquainted with the notion of a policeman in plain clothes. But nobody could possibly say that this gentleman was in plain clothes. Why not wear his uniform if he was resolved to show every stranger in the street his badge? Perhaps, after all, he had no uniform, for these lands were but